Hey, what's up YouTube? Today I got a little short video on these wind inverter generators. So, been having a little bit of an issue with these generators in particular with oil consumption. And years ago, all these small engines, I switched to running a 30 weight, straight 30 weight diesel oil. And the reason for that is because these generators, manufacturer tells you they want you to run 10W30. Alright, well, the problem with that is these things get so hot that oil thins out and it just burns the oil. And when you use these things for hundreds of hours, typically these generators that I service, I got a bunch of them, I got 60 of them. They run for roughly 300 hours per season. So 300 hours twice a year. And they would never make it to 300 hours before they would run out of oil. Enough to trip the low oil shutdown. So that was always an issue. Now before, I get people in the comments saying, well, you're supposed to change the oil every 100 hours and you're supposed to check it every 8 hours and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I know that. Try telling that to general everyday people. The only thing they know how to do is put gas in it and start it. Okay, so you have to make these things as dummy proof as possible. Alright, so the oil was getting burned out. Sometimes it was clogging up the exhaust screens. So, I was looking up a lot of these things like the Predators and things like that. The iPowers, they actually use a cloned Yamaha engine. So I was reading the Yamaha manual, and Yamaha actually wants you to, I believe it's anything above 90 degrees outside ambient temperature, they want you to run Yamalube 40 weight. They want you to run straight 40 weight oil in their generators. So that made me start researching, and that's when I found out the straight weights, they don't thin like the other ones do. So I switched to the 30 weight diesel oil a couple years back. Now these generators can run the full 300 hours, and they all, when I go to do the service on them, the oil is always where I left it at. It hasn't lost any oil. And I've also noticed it's not as dirty. It doesn't have as much carbon deposits in it when I change it. It's still dirty. It still needs to get changed. But it's not thin like water. It's not black like charcoal. It still has some viscosity left to it, which is good. That's what you want. But, all that being said, for some reason these generators still manage to use oil. This one in particular has a little bit of cylinder wall scarring, so it does smoke a little bit. Then I was running this one. Typically what I do in my service procedure is I start them up and I let them run with a full load, almost full load. This one's rated for 1700 watts. That's a 1500 watt load, so that's close enough. So these will run for about 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. That's how long it takes me to service a generator. But this one was overheating and shutting down. Now what I mean by overheating was the engine RPM was actually dropping, slowly dropping to the point where the engine speed was so low it couldn't maintain the power output required, so it would trip the overload and the unit would go to an idle. Well, after sitting like that for a minute or two, I would unplug the load, hit the reset, and it would go back and run fine for another 15-20 minutes. So I'm like, this engine is overheating, and what's actually happening is either the piston is swelling from the heat to the point where it's getting too much friction against the cylinder wall, or the cylinder head is overheating too much and swelling and causing it to clamp down around the piston. Either way, that's bad. So I put my hand behind there to make sure it had good airflow coming across the engine, and it didn't. It had horrible airflow, very minimal. So I pulled the back off, and look what I found. This is from the factory. This is, you know, just looking at it, you're looking at the back of the generator like this, you assumed, well, it's got plenty of airflow, right? No. A little bit over half of it is completely blocked off. And I don't know why. I don't know if maybe these were designed thinking that they would run in a northern climate where it's a lot colder out, maybe. I'm not sure. But what I do know is this really restricts the airflow down to a minimum. So that would explain the overheating. So sure enough, I removed that piece of foam. It's pretty easy. You take this little clip off, and then it's actually glued to this. You just rip it off, put it all back together. Issue's 100% resolved now. I just ran it for longer this time. I ran it for 30 minutes. Showed no sign of slowing down. So if you have one of these wind generators, I would suggest to you, unless you live up somewhere where you have a colder climate, but I would suggest that you remove this completely. There's no need for it. And with these little tight engines, you need the most airflow you can, because the way they design all of these generators is the engine itself is completely encased in this plastic, okay? So the idea is you have the pull start up in the front, and that's your engine fan as well. The flywheel has, fan blades on it. And it's designed, in theory, to suck air in the front and push air over the entire engine and exit out the back. Well, when you block off this much of the ability of air to flow, you're really doing a disservice. So, but this is the only model I've seen this with. Predator doesn't do it. Honda doesn't do it. These iPowers don't do it. They have full airflow. So this is the first time I've ran into this issue, and it's only with these wind generators. As a matter of fact, I think this is a newer model. Let me see. Yeah, this is a newer model, and they have not put this whatever you want to call this in here, this mat. It's about 1/4 inch thick. So the newer models, I think maybe they realized there was a problem, so they quit doing it. So if you have an older one of these, one of those, I would suggest you take your exhaust cover off, remove this pad completely, and get your little small engine some more airflow. All right, YouTube, later.